Before we get into today's video, I wanted to give you all a heads up on a special giveaway that I'm doing right now celebrating 5 years on YouTube. And to do that, I'm giving away a PlayStation 5. This PlayStation will come with a copy of Horizon Forbidden West as well as a Sony Pulse headset. Now you're probably asking yourself, what do I have to do to enter to win? Well, for one, click the link in the description below this video. There's multiple ways to enter. There's no payment required to win, but I do stress you must be a resident of the continental United States in order to be eligible to win. Those of you who regularly watch the Blerd Cave, you probably already heard me talk about this, but we will be announcing the winner on the October 1st edition of the Blerd Cave. So click the link below, follow all the instructions and everything you see there, share it around so you can get multiple entries. I wish you all the best of luck and thank you all for supporting this channel over the last 5 years. So let's get to the video. What's up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd Without Fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we are going to be talking about X-Men Red number 6 by Al Ewing and Stefano Caselli. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down why the Great Ring's Seat of Night have finally stepped forward, and more importantly, who they are, as well as how Storm and Magneto's callback from 1981's Uncanny X-Men number 150 will change Arakko forever.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
So when we pick this book up, it's shortly after Magneto has revived himself after having been killed by Uranos the Eternal. Uranos' death machines are still waging war across Arakko. People are dying left and right. The Great Ring is in shambles. The only thing standing between Arakko and total annihilation is Magneto and Storm and the last few remnants of the Great Ring, those being Lactuca of the Stars, Subanar of the Depths, Zelo, Lodos Lagos, and the traitor a.x.e, the Unbeaten, who is still in the depths fighting Subinar's horde of random and sundry giant aquatic life. While a.x.e does tell us that she has done what she's done because there is no way to win this fight, Uranos has won, period. There is no question to it, even with everything that has happened up to this point. Now, I do feel like eventually when we get to X-Men Red number 7, maybe a.x.e, the Unbeaten, will flip, because as we learn in this issue, this takes place before this week's a.x.e Judgment Day number 4. So at this moment, she doesn't know that Uranos is about to lose. So maybe she will flip and the tides will change. Maybe we'll see something come up in a.x.e Death Through the Mutants number 3, because it doesn't happen in Judgment Day number 4. But right now, everybody is fighting the good fight. We see Nova of the Nova Corps, not a mutant, but a normal human, trying to do everything he can to save the people of Arakko, and it's not working. Even with his best efforts, he's still falling behind in the fight against Uranos' death machines. And we see characters like Sunspot, Cora of the Burning Heart, and Wrongslide fighting back against the horde of death machines that Uranos has unleashed, and just the same, none of it is actually working. But what we do see working, and this is happening all behind the scenes, is that the Night Seats, or what is otherwise known as the Shadow Table, have stepped forward. Something that was first introduced to us in Al Ewing's Sword number 8, when we were given a breakdown of all of the different seats of the Great Ring of Arakko, and what was listed at the very bottom of one of its pages was that there are 3 other seats that have yet to have been revealed and will not reveal themselves until they feel they're ready. And wouldn't you know it, now they feel ready. Now, to talk about them, the Night Seats are something that aren't new to Arakko. This is something that actually dates back to the earliest moments in Arakko's recorded history. The Seats of Night were a system of checks and balances for the Great Ring of Arakko to ensure no one usurped absolute power or tried to overstep their bounds or led the people of Arakko, or then Okara, into ruin. No one elected the members of the Shadow Table but themselves. This was one thing the Great Ring had no control over. They chose their own members, and their members chose themselves in many cases, and they were not subject to the same rules as the Great Ring itself, making them a representation of what Arakko, or then Okara, could have been. This is the one part of the Great Ring of Arakko that refuses access to Omega level mutants, just as no mutant who is not Omega level will ever sit on the Great Ring of Arakko. No Omega level mutant will ever sit on the seat of Night. One of its chief members being a mutant who had no power at all. The Weaponless One, someone who has no other name but that. Now, to be fair, they were never actually officially a part of the Great Ring, despite being referred to as such. They had no real actual power or say in policy, only advising on policy, and before that, they were little more than spies for the Great Ring. But Genesis, the wife of Apocalypse, saw little use for them, preferring more forward and open uses of power as opposed to Cold War tactics. She'd eventually banish the Night Seats when Idil, the Ancestor, prophesied the coming doom from a myth that we witnessed in the Ten of Swords event during Jonathan Hickman's X-Men number 14. Genesis believed Idil was weak and a fool to believe anyone or anything could end Arakko's greatness, and against the wishes of the Night Seats, who wanted Genesis to not attack the Horde willy-nilly, knowing that they'd lose. From then on, the Night Seats would no longer exist, having been removed from existence by current Great Ring member Aura Sarada at the request of Genesis. And then came the fall of Arakko, when the Amenthi Horde Idil had predicted finally knocked on their doorstep. The Night Seats were one of the only things keeping the spirit of Arakko alive during the time of immense rule over Arakko, what is otherwise referred to as the Vile. And the last remaining members of the Night Seats had 2 children. The Weaponless One and an unnamed mate gave birth to a weaponless child. Very likely the Fisher King, and it explains why the other Araki revered him as a leader despite him being weaponless, or in other words, lacking a mutant power. The other child is said to have burned with her mother's heart. This was very likely a reference to Korra of the Burning Heart. It's said that eventually the fight was lost and love died in the flame, but this is more likely a reference to more than just the Amenthi Horde having overrun Arakko and enslaved all of its mutants, but also the death of the Weaponless One's mate. For those thinking the Fisher King is the Weaponless One, he's not. He specifically mentions being born in the prisons of the Vile during Immense conquering of Arakko in X-Men Red number 1, so he is very likely the weaponless child. The Night Seats would lay dormant for all that time until Ten of Swords, and when Apocalypse called for all of Immense mutant prisoners to be freed and returned to Krakoa during Ten of Swords Destruction number 1, it set the table for Sunspot to somehow find them. He knew who they were despite never having any reason to know that they existed. They were wiped from recorded history. This is personally something I feel will be revealed down the road, but for now, just know Sunspot is responsible for the reformation of the Night Seats. Now that the Night Seats are back, they are 3 individuals as they have always been, with Sunspot taking the seat of nobody. This is a major move for Roberto because his entire life has been about being somebody, being the rich guy, being the one everyone looks to, the grandstander, the playboy, the guy who gets the girl. The seat of nobody is a very specific choice to be given to him, and I think is going to probably lead towards him learning more about how he is not the center of the universe. Something that he has technically been learning for quite some time, but I think it's really gonna hit him home in his new role on the Night Seats. The seat of nowhere belongs to Sizia of the Smoke, and her seat is actually appropriate as well because she can exist anywhere and nowhere. It's implied that she might actually be the sister of Korra of the Burning Heart. Her weapon is that she can teleport herself and others to anywhere that she's familiar with. What I find interesting about her power is that it's very much like Nightcrawler's, whereas when she leaves a puff of smoke that smells of jasmine, as opposed to when Nightcrawler teleports and leaves a puff of smoke that smells of brimstone. And then last but not least is the Fisher King himself, as we've already mentioned. He has the seat of nothing because he has nothing. He has no weapon, he has no power, he has no name, and he is the owner of nothing. This is a great deal of change for Arakko because the Seed of Night returning is in a way a return to form, but also the promise of a future where change can happen. With the Great Ring as fractured as it is, this is an opportunity for the Night Seeds to take up a more advisory role and maybe even possibly change the rules of the Great Ring as it is. Maybe to change the rule that a mutant doesn't need to be Omega level to sit on the Great Ring. Who knows? The mutants of Arakko are caught in the middle of a war that they're not prepared to fight. For too long, Arakko has valued individual strength over all else, refusing to work as a team, only in loose-knit packs and uncoordinated armies. To win this battle against Uranos' death machines, they have to be a team, something that is considered anathema in Iraqi culture. But things change, just as we saw earlier with the character Craig of NASA, a normal human who is just there working under NASA orders to observe the soil and dirt of Arakko after the mutants terraformed Mars and turned it into the planet that it is now. The children of the planet accept him. The adults of the planet accept him because he was no enemy to them. They didn't harm him, and by his own admission, despite being a stranger in a strange land, he felt more at home with them than he even felt back on Earth among normal humans. Sure, the Iraqi have their problem people, just like humans do, but they accepted him for who he was, not what he was. This shows not only that Arakko is changing, but that there was always more to it than meets the eye to begin with. Same as how Magneto learned the right of hospitality on Arakko, that they all share everything, their home, their food, their work, all of it. There are no doors in Arakko because all are welcome. Imagine how much more powerful the Iraqi mutants would be if they not only lived, farmed, laughed, and drank together, but also fought together, using their weapons as one cohesive unit, taking advantage of what we now call the mutant circuit, something that's kind of always been around, even back in the early days of X-Men comics in the 60s and 70s, but has a more scientific name today. What if Iraqi allowed themselves to work together as one cohesive fighting force, the way the X-Men always have? And this is pretty much how we get to Storm and Magneto's callback to 1981's Uncanny X-Men number 150. In that issue, and we also saw this in other issues like Uncanny X-Men number 112, and I believe even Uncanny X-Men number 104. At various moments, whenever Storm tried to use her ability to call lightning down to strike Magneto, Magneto would use his powers to absorb it. And while in the past, he has done this to basically shrug off the attacks just to get rid of it, it wasn't until Uncanny X-Men number 150 where Magneto would actually absorb Storm's lightning, not to get rid of it, but to empower himself, to make him the most powerful he had ever been up to that point. And that's exactly what Storm and Magneto are doing now. Storm, seeing Magneto in this weakened state where he's having to concentrate on not just using his powers to stop Uranos' death machines, but also having to use his powers to keep himself alive. Storm is channeling enough lightning and electricity into him, allowing him to fuel himself with that power to keep himself not only alive, but also to make himself more powerful than he already was. Two Omega level mutants coming together to form a mutant circuit in ways no Iraqi mutant ever has. The Iraqi don't believe in this. They don't believe that working together, helping each other, it's not something that they value. They view the term help as a bad word. It's a four-letter word to them, both figuratively and literally. When Storm refers to that moment from Uncanny X-Men number 150, where he took her lightning to empower himself, and even reveals in that moment taking some of Storm's life force, she's now giving him all of that freely. He's not demanding it. He's not taking it for himself. Storm and Magneto are showing the Iraqi what it really means to work together and why it's not a bad thing. Seeing Storm and Magneto wield power on levels that the Iraqi have never even seen before. Watching them one-shot one of Uranos' most powerful self-replicating death machines to a level that it can't replicate itself ever again, this has changed the game for Arakko. With even Lotus Logos and Zelo who have already kind of expressed that they're already open to the idea of change when it comes to working together, when it comes to changing the way things are on Arakko. Lotus Logos already having experiences by working with Magneto during the fight against not just Uranos' death machines, but even in X-Men Red number 5, we saw Lotus Logos work with Magneto, supplying him with the metal that he would need to fight back against Uranos in the first place. And where at that time, it didn't actually work out in their favor, this time, they're actually seeing the fruit of working together actually achieving results. Results they wouldn't have gotten as individuals. But both Lotus Logos and Zelo believe this might be the way forward if we survive Judgment Day. Maybe we should actually think of helping as less a bad thing and more a good thing. And with Magneto fully charged by Storm's lightning, the seats of night having been reformed, and what's left of the Great Ring of Arakko seeing real change on the horizon, it's now that they march forward into a.x.e. Judgment Day number 4. Now, with that said, there are some other really interesting things that are going on here. Some little, some small, some not so much. We do know that WizKid is finally going to learn the truth about Abigail Brand, because as we saw in Sword number 10, when WizKid had attacked Cable by unleashing an electric onslaught in his mind, one that led to him losing control of the techno-organic virus that he keeps held back within his arm, WizKid, in an effort to make this up to Cable, says that he owes Cable a marker, and this marker is Cable and WizKid are going to have a real honest heart-to-heart talk about Abigail Brand. And we've learned in previous issues of X-Men Red that Cable and Manifold are already talking about Abigail Brand and how to bring her down. Not only are Manifold and Cable working together, but we also know the character Thunderbird is also on board working alongside Manifold and Cable. And right now, Abigail Brand is dead and in the process of being resurrected, something that is the worst possible scenario because this means Cable, Manifold, and Thunderbird, as well as WizKid, are likely to learn the truth about what Abigail Brand has been up to, the fact that she's been working with Orchis. This is something that Abigail is absolutely positively terrified of because at this moment, as she even says, she has never felt more vulnerable being in a state between life and death. But that's not why she feels vulnerable, because it's at this moment she has no agency or control over what happens next. At this moment, at this prime moment, anything can happen, and if they learn the truth about her, she may not have enough time to get ahead of this before everything that she's been trying to build comes crashing down on top of her. Now that said, she has kept certain records so that she can remind herself of what she has done up to this point. We learned this in Al Ewing's Sword number 11, because as she says, she had to make sure that she was able to keep up to speed in case of a sudden resurrection in her near future. She would know exactly what she's done and what she hasn't done. This is not too dissimilar for what Mr. Sinister has been doing that was revealed during the Immortal X-Men series, specifically in Immortal X-Men number 1, where we learned that he's been rebooting the timeline willy-nilly using clones of Moira McTaggart, and that he keeps a log of everything that has happened up to each point, and he's already rebooted the timeline 25 times. Now, Abigail Brand is not rebooting a timeline, but she definitely will know that she has signed up with Orchis, that she had betrayed the Kree Skrull Empire during the last Annihilation, that she has killed longtime X-Men villain and former member of Orchis, Henry Peter Gyrick, as well as a laundry list of other things. We still don't know what Abigail's endgame is, but whatever it is, she is not in it for mutant kind. She's only in it for herself. She has no allegiance to Orchis or Krakoa, mutant kind, humans, whatever. The only thing that matters to Abigail Brand is Abigail Brand. This issue has a lot of callback to the X-Men event 10 of Swords, so if you want to know more about what was going on there, I have a playlist right here breaking down that entire event. And if you want to know what happens to Magneto immediately after the final page of X-Men Red number 6, check out this video right here. In the meantime, let me know what you thought about X-Men Red number 6. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.